Alright, lock in because today we're going to be rating every episode of the Beyblade Metal Fight Saga. This final part focusing on Beyblade Zero G or Shogun Steel, which is kind of uncharted territory for me and apparently YouTube, as I don't really see a lot of content on it. When you hear Metal Saga, you don't think of Zero G. Most of the conversation is always about like the original 3 parts of the Metal trilogy. I didn't watch Shogun Steel when it was originally airing because by that time, it was my 6th grade year of middle school. I aged out of Beyblade and was more worried about stuff like trying to get a phone and like playing stuff like Grand Theft Auto 5 and like COD and such. My focus shifted so much that like, hey, I had Beyblades to show off for every part of this series, except for this part. Like I just flat out have no Shogun Steel Beyblades, unfortunately. Anyways, let's dive in here, talk about some Shogun Steel and see if it's worthy of being talked about in conversations with the Metal trilogy. Episode 1, A New Age Arrives. It's the start of the Shogun Steel era as we get to see that Tsubasa revived Beyblade 7 years after the Nemesis crisis, and the appearances from former Bladers don't stop there. We see that Chief Madoka is still around, fixing Beyblades and such, but it seems like she's no longer a big-time analyst and entrusted that role to Maru, the Madoka of this generation. So just like Madoka, she's not gonna be mentioned much by me. Like she's kind of just an accessory to everything that's going on. Madoka sent her out to keep an eye on our main protagonist, so like that's gonna be how she got involved with him. And we get to see manager Benkei working at a burger joint, still glazing Kyoya because he named the burger after Leon's special move. I wonder if Kyoya gets a cut of that. But yeah, really this episode centers around our new protagonist, Zero. He got his Samurai Ifrit Beyblade from Jenga, which looks to be like right after the Nemesis crisis ended, so it's kind of like a passing of the torch moment. He even has a similar special move. Shooting Star Crush is his version of Shooting Star Attack or Star Blast Attack, so you get those Sora vibes as well, like when Sora was trying to use Jenga's special move. Basically, in his little small town, Zero is him. He's on like an 100-game win streak, but when he went to the city, he was still able to beat some generics, but he lost to Shinobu and his Ninja Salamander because like he actually had a real Beyblade. He wasn't a generic, and he had way more experience in the new Cyclone Stadium, a moving stadium that's going to be the main stadium for this generation. And Shinobu did what pretty much no one else but Hyoma tried against Jenga. He actually moved out of the way of the Shooting Star Crush, showing that he actually has a brain, unlike everyone else. So yeah, I'll give this episode an A. I like the introductory vibes. I like how previous characters are easing us into this new generation, and yeah, I like Zero's introduction more than Jenga's introduction. This was a complete shocker to see the protagonist lose in the first episode, but I like it. I'm open to a protagonist not being him right off the bat, and like we get to see their journey and growth. We kind of get to see the journey of Kyoya. Like Zero's going to be playing sort of a Kyoya role for a few episodes, trying to get back at Shinobu. Episode 2, Defeat Pirate Orochi. In the previous episode, Benkei offered to train Zero, so in this episode, we get to see the training. If you watched Metal Fusion, you know exactly what kind of training this is. 0% Bay battling and 100% PE class. He tried to sell them a bag of he was the one that trained the legendary Kenta, which is true. Like it played a part in how he developed his special move and beat Hikaru, but come on man, the Ryuga journey was way more impactful. I think his words would hold a bit more weight if he actually got to fight in the final showdown against Nemesis, but since he didn't get that, I like that this is the way that he gets to like make an impact and be useful. So yeah, Zero was getting tired of training, so he went to the park to battle 8 Unobara, this skateboard guy, and his pirate Orochi. He has a nice reputation around town, known as a strong blader, which that's going to be funny by the end of this series. But like yeah, you get the sense that maybe Benkei's right, maybe Hotshot is not ready to battle yet. Like he was getting dominated. 8's Beyblade was battling like he skated, but it turns out he was ready. This was the perfect time for him to miss out on training because he gained enough strength in his launch to where 8 couldn't just stall out the battle. And by battling in the stadium, getting experience, watching how 8 used the stadium and implementing that into his strategy, Hotshot actually learned how to use the stadium and beat 8, which impressed Madoka and Tsubasa. They're keeping eyes on him, which I am like a little confused about. I actually understand why they want to keep eyes on him, like he looks like he could be a trendsetter, an influential guy that can help revive Beyblade and like lead the next generation and such. That makes sense. However, my question is, Jinga gave Zero his Beyblade and like Madoka and Tsubasa are his best friends. They won a world championship together, so like did he really not tell them about Zero? Obviously he thought that there was something special about Zero, so like I don't know why he wouldn't tell his friends. But yeah, I'll give this episode an A because it was a good balance between the training and the battle. Nothing got shortchanged, and the battle was actually really good, really strategic, as we got to learn more about the stadium, and like it doesn't feel like a plot armor main character type of win. Like there was actual growth for Zero in this fight as he got to learn the stadium and show off his training, showing that he has Masamune type potential, maybe even more, because while Masamune took so many beatings while learning Jinga's Pegasus, Zero learned the Cyclone Stadium with much less experience. Episode 3, the Blazing Special Move. In this episode, Tsubasa, Madoka, and Benkei commits their next step in reviving Beyblade by hosting this one-day tournament and broadcasting it nationwide so everyone could see the new Cyclone Stadium. The random battles don't matter, you know what we're here for. It's all about the Zero versus Shinobu rematch. I say that the fight was interesting, seeing Zero's growth and his use of new strategies. Zero was only planning on using one strategy, like the one that he used to beat 8 by circling around the stadium, rocking it, bringing the other Beyblade in for an attack. That's his signature technique. He wanted to spam it until he remembered what Benkei said about risk-taking, which caused him to move unpredictably and create a burning uppercut special move that actually worked better for the stadium than his shooting Star Crush special move and got him the win. Also, I don't know if it was intended, but burning uppercut? Bull uppercut? You can tell bro's been training with Benkei now. I'll give this episode an A. It's just a good episode. It's really banking like all on the Zero versus Shinobu fight, but it was good. The payback was nice and it feels earned because Zero went on that training journey. It's just like a little bit of a shocker because like I wasn't expecting him to beat Shinobu. Like I thought that Shinobu was more in line with being somewhat of a final boss or something like that. Despite not watching Shogun Steel really, there's one character that has some really nice theme music, so like throughout the years I always watched this one battle just for the music, and Zero told him like something along the lines of he's gonna beat him, face Shinobu in the finals, and surpass the legendary Blader. So like I thought that meant that he didn't beat Shinobu until the finals of that tournament. I thought that like he was still in the hunt for a win. Apparently not, which caught me off guard here, but like that won't affect this episode's grade. It's a solid episode, and I like that Zero like kinda learned a lesson that Sora learned. He came up with shooting Star Crush to mimic Jenga, but in the Cyclone Stadium, it's not that effective, forcing him to come up with his own way of battling. Episode 4, The Extraordinary Synchrome. In this episode, Zero and Shinobu went on Benkei's like special camping trip training where they developed sort of an early Jenga and Masamune and King type of like competitive rivalry and relationship. This training actually helped Zero out later on in this episode because his opponent's a dummy. You see, 8 was salty about his loss to Zero, so in the previous episode, his brother Kite, Big Bro, was gathering up all of this data on his Ifrit and Zero's battling style so he could face him with his Guardian Leviathan. But when they fought, he started crashing out because his calculations were off. Somehow, this guy didn't expect Zero to get stronger from the last time he saw them, which threw off his calculations. Maybe it is kind of dumb, but also maybe some grace can be given because like they're trying to revive Beyblade, and like maybe Zero's determination is like one of a kind in this era. Maybe his opponents never trained hard like Zero, so like that's why he wasn't expecting Zero to get better. Anyways, it's here where we get quite an introduction to the Synchrome system, where after the loss, Kite took his brother's Beyblade and made an Orochi Leviathan that Ifrit just couldn't touch low diff. I'll give this episode an A because it's the perfect way to show off the Synchrome system. I like how they're both brothers, so like this introduction actually fits well. Like it's combining that brotherly power, so like it all feels natural. It's a perfect way to give this system an introduction. And yeah, I just like how Zero is more real than Jenga. Like he's taking losses and now he has to learn one of the defining features of this generation. It's like we're following an actual human, like a realistic protagonist, which is a change of pace, but it's welcome. I'd probably be even more shocked if I had not watched like 13 or so episodes of Beyblade X prior and seen Bird get owned every single time. I have not watched Burst yet, but maybe Shogun Steel is where this shift towards more realistic protagonists started. Episode 5, The Strength of a Bond. In this episode, Zero and Shinobu finally got a formal introduction to everything we've been learning about so far with Tsubasa, Madoka, and Benkei, and like the Cyclone Stadium and Synchrome system, and just being trusted with being influential bleeders in this new era of Beyblade, you know, like being part of that revival. But Shinobu didn't want to combine his strength with Zero because he was being a drama queen. He didn't like that the legendary Jenga gave someone like Zero his samurai Ifrit. This was obviously the holdup because without a Synchrome Beyblade, Zero couldn't get his revenge on the Unabara brothers. But Benkei talked him out of it and they made a Salamander Ifrit to beat a Roji Leviathan and exposed that the brothers are kind of fraudsters. They benefited from the fact that they were the first ones to figure out the Synchrome system, that's all. Oh yeah, and there's a girl, Ren Kurenai. This is the female representation in this sport. Like she's going to be the token bleeder girl like Hikaru in Metal Fusion. She has a Thief Phoenix, but like that battle that she had with Zero wasn't all that interesting, which is why I'll give this episode a B. Her battle kind of weighs this episode down. Like I wish there was a little bit of Worf effect where she got to beat an actual named character to add more intrigue to this battle to make me fear Ren more. So like that's why her battle and loss to Zero kind of falls flat. But I still like this episode because of the themes at play. It's like, I like the vibe. In Metal Fusion, Beyblade was already an established game, but now like they're trying to revive the game and teach the new generation about Blader's spirit. And like, yeah, I like the rebuild vibes. In Zero, building out a nice little squad so far, trying to spread the word. It's a decent episode. Episode 6, Explode, Phantom Fire Shot. In this episode, through Benkei's training, our heroes learned about themselves. Well, the Unabara brothers didn't learn much of anything because they quit, but Zero learned that his launch accuracy and Beyblade control was kind of off. But really this episode was mostly about Ren and Shinobu. Ren had to learn that she's not her, which is a lesson that she will continuously learn for the whole entire season. She's only fit for battling in a Cyclone-based stadium, but even in the Cyclone-based stadium that's supposed to be her specialty, she can never lose there. She lost to Zero previously, and she lost to the new blader of this episode, Takanosuke, and his Archer Griffin. And Shinobu had to learn that he's using his Ninja Salamander wrong, too aggressively, trying to battle like Zero instead of battling like a ninja. Salamander's specialty, which helped him come up with a special move that he was trying to get for most of this episode, Phantom Fire Shot, and he beat Takanosuke. I think I'll give this episode an A just for what it did for the characters, exposing their weaknesses that they need to work on, and Shinobu overcame that weakness in the end. I keep on saying it, but like, yeah, I like the appeal of seeing their growth in real time, like baby steps type of feeling. It's just a solid episode that I can't complain about at all. Like, it gets a lot of stuff right and it's entertaining. Episode 7, Kraken Attacks. I'm gonna go ahead and give this episode an A. This episode could potentially be labeled as filler or like of lesser importance because, like, I'm not gonna lie, not much of importance actually happened in this episode, but I like it. Like, it's an episode just for the lulz. You have the gang all at a beach and they're just messing around. You have Benkei and Madoka's ideology clash and the kids siding with Madoka because Benkei was trying to turn their beach day into training. Then you have this Kraken guy, Kikurigen, and his pirate Kraken that was built up to be a menacing beach monster, but he's kind of a gag character like Tetsuya. Reminds me of Tetsuya even more because the battle was at this beach setting. Then at every transitionary point, you just have Tsubasa saying, "This is summer. I don't think this episode did anything good for the characters, or I don't think it did anything at all for the characters. Like, I don't think they got better at anything, but I like the idea of this episode, you know, like getting a breather from all of that Beyblade and like training stuff and like just laughing. I feel like with the intensity of the Nemesis crisis, we didn't have episodes like these in Fury. So like an episode like this kind of reminds me of why I like Fusion, because like they had a fair bit of comedy focused episodes as well. Episode 8, the Jet Black Dragon. In this episode, we get right back into the action. Our heroes got sent out to demonstrate to everyone how the Cyclone battle works. Zero and Shinobu had it easy, but at the Unobara Brothers Stadium and Rin and Takanosuke Stadium, we get to meet the Dragon Emperor. The Dragon Emperor of this generation, that is, the Jet Black Dragon, Sakyo, and his Ronin Dragoon. And just like the El Drago line, he can rotate to the left, which freaked everyone out. So basically this episode was just setting him up as an antagonist, not playing by the rules, entering ongoing battles, trash talking, and completely low diffing some of our main gang. You see, because Dragoon rotates to the left, he was able to stop the Cyclone Stadium from moving, which took away like all of the strategies that everyone was working on, and that had to upset Tsubasa, because like they sent these guys out there to demonstrate how the Cyclone Stadium works, but like it doesn't work when met with bays that rotate oppositely. I'll give this episode a B. I like the reverse rotation gimmick, freaking everyone out and like disrupting their stasis, but I don't think this was the best episode ever or anything, because Sakyo didn't battle our main guys. Like, it was a bit too easy for him to just completely dominate. Also, I don't think that Sakyo is an interesting character quite yet, which matters because he's the main character of this episode, and Zero and Shinobu being stuck in filler weighs this episode down. Like, it kind of guarantees that we're not getting a good battle, a good showdown here. Episode 9, Clash, Zero versus Sakyo. In this episode, the focus is now on Zero and Shinobu taking on the bad guys. Zero had to take on Akuya and his Archer Gargoyle. He's this guy that had a gang like they were trying to take over the stadium, but Zero low diffed him. He wasn't all that, just like the Kraken guy, and like they didn't even give him a major win for his introduction so we could really fear him. Challenging the main character right away is a bold move, especially when it's clear that with the new Dragon Emperor in town, they're gonna have to preserve Zero's unbeatable aura, so like you think that he has a chance at beating Sakyo. If he loses here, you know he's not beating Sakyo, which is why this Akuya match comes at a very unfortunate time in the story. Like, he just can't win here. But yeah, after this, it's pretty much Sakyo versus Shinobu and Sakyo versus Zero in some decent battles. The Sakyo versus Zero fight was definitely better, but like I'm just shocked. They managed to fit 3 decent to solid fights within an episode, which is nice. Like, it's handled so well here. But despite that, I want to give this episode a B, because like I don't think that Akuya made his mark as a character. Like, he wasn't menacing at all, and like I would have preferred a Wharf Effect demonstration where he was set up to be a big bad guy that Zero had to take down, which would have made his loss more shocking. But yeah, that's all. Like, that's holding it down a bit, but the fights against Sakyo were good, and like Zero gave him some difficulty, which made the battle more interesting. Probably could have won if the terrain weren't so rocky. Oh yeah, also like not gonna affect this grade, but I'm gonna touch on something. I hear that people say like it's confirmed that Ryuga is still alive because of how Sakyo got his Beyblade. However, unlike Zero, outright stating that he got his Beyblade from Jenga, Sakyo said that he got his Beyblade from a legendary blader. Everyone assumed that it's Ryuga, but like, what if it's not him? What if Ryuga actually died in the anime? Because like I know something different happens in the manga, but like what if he actually died in the anime and maybe Kenta was the one that gave Sakyo the Beyblade? Because like, you know, Kenta's connected to Ryuga because of that journey, and like Ryuga gave him the power of El Drago's star fragment, so like maybe he has some of that El Drago power, I would say. Also, later on, Tsubasa said that Dragoon was the only reverse rotating Bey that the WBBA created, so like did they give it to Ryuga or Kenta so like they could pass it to Sakyo, kind of like how they probably gave Ifrit to Jenga to pass on to Zero? Just something to think about. Like maybe that could have been expanded on with a longer season. Oh yeah, And speaking of Kenta and Ryuga, they're trying to reheat those nachos here, with Takanosuke being impressed with Sakyo and like he wanted to follow him so he could master his Archer Griffin. It's a relationship that ends up being somewhat of a middle ground between Kenta and Ryuga and Kyoya and Benkei. Episode 10, The Ironclad Golem. Iron-Chad Golem. In this episode, we get an introduction to a scandal, a conspiracy. So this guy, Yoshio, came to town and he's a bad guy. He's breaking everyone's Beyblades with his bandit golem, which by the end of this episode, Madoka revealed that it was not a Beyblade created by the WBBA. This ended up being a big plot thread for the season. Can't they just like ban him from playing in WBBA stadiums since he's not using like a WBBA Beyblade? Or maybe they can't because like there's not enough strong people to take him on and like defend the stadiums. I don't know, but like yeah, basically his mission was to show that he has the best defense type. So he was looking to challenge Kite. He beat 8 impersonating Kite, then eventually beat Kite, which was actually a shocker. Like I thought that Kite was being set up for a win here. It's an episode that really focuses on the brothers and like Kite researched the Beyblade and all that, and like I thought he was gonna get revenge for 8. I even thought that there was gonna be some Synchrome action with 8 again, but like no, like none of that happened, which was shocking, I'm not gonna lie. I was fully expecting Kite to win. I'll give this episode a C. The battles aren't reaching the levels that they met in the previous seasons, which has a good reason. Like these Beyblades were probably meant to be less destructive because of the Nemesis crisis, but like these battles were boring. I don't like how the Unobara brothers were fodder in this episode. Like I thought it was their time to shine, but apparently only Zero and Shinobu can shine, and like we don't get a happy ending here. But to be fair, I did kind of want something like this to happen to someone because like we had no reason to fear the Kraken guy and Akuya because like they never won before they got beat. So like at least they're setting up Yoshio to be formidable. It's just that the battle was kind of boring, and like I thought that with everything they had going on, the wrong character got the shine. Like it should have been the Unobara brothers with how much they put into them for this episode. Episode 11, A Heated Battle of Friendship. So this episode was essentially a training episode. The Unobara brothers trained with their Synchrome Beyblade against Takanosuke, someone that was unsuspecting, so of course he lost, but you know, Sakyo was stalking them, learning about the Synchrome system, so he finally accepted Takanosuke to use him. Then you have Zero, Shinobu, Rin, and Maru training as well. They decided that Zero would battle Yoshio, so Shinobu and Rin were test dummies and like they were trying to get Zero to sharpen his skills by dodging and using the stadium to his advantage. It's funny how Rin thought that she had a chance to battle Yoshio. It was clearly going to be either Zero or Shinobu because unfortunately, she's a female blader in a shonen series. The writers never put any legwork into making me think that Rin is strong because like she's yet to beat a relevant named opponent and it'll remain that way for a while. Anyways, I'll give this episode a C. I recognize the importance of this training. Like there's nothing wrong from a writing point of view. It's just that it's kind of boring from an entertainment value point of view. The battles are either boring or predictable. Rin, Shinobu, and Zero are just like practicing the same stuff. The Kraken guy is complete fodder. Takanosuke was never losing. Synchrome bays are overpowered against normal bays. The Unobara brothers were never losing, so the battles were just predictable. Episode 12, The Ruthless Behemoth. So basically this episode is the conclusion to the Yoshio arc and the start or like continuation of the conspiracy. So basically what happened was Akuya was trying to take over the Bay Park Stadium, and I actually thought that Akuya and Yoshio were going to be together. Like I thought they were going to be part of the bad guys group, but actually Akuya tried to recruit Yoshio to his gang, which he rejected. This was the right call because he destroyed Akuya and the gang, showing that they had nothing to offer him. But after this, Zero got revenge on Yoshio using his special training. But then we get more to this conspiracy plotline because we meet Kira and his berserker behemoth, another non-WBBA Beyblade, and he knows Yoshio, so Shinobu battled him in place of Zero because he just got off of this intense battle. And of course, because Kira is a new character and part of the bad guys team, he was able to win and just completely destroy Shinobu's special move. I'll give this episode a B. I'm still not completely sold on the battles. Like I said, they're not as good or entertaining as the ones in the Metal Trilogy, which completely matters. People talk down on you if you don't like this season and campaign for this season to be included in the same talks as the trilogy because it's technically in the Metal Saga. So okay, if it's going to be in the Metal Saga, then it's going to be held to those same standards, which these battles are not meeting as of right now. I think everything that happened in this episode was fine, but the battles were kind of boring, which is why I gave this episode a B rather than an A. Episode 13 of Fierce Synchrome Battle. In this episode, they're trying to settle the score with Kira in a Synchrome battle. Before they could get there, Zero had to settle the score with the Unobara brothers Synchrome Bay for the right to face Kira's Synchrome Bay because this all started with Kite. Yoshio was looking for Kite, and now Kira is going to take Yoshio's Beyblade to Synchrome with, so Kite felt like he should be the one to battle, but we already saw Kite Synchrome versus Zero Synchrome, so the outcome was so predictable. So was Zero's defeat to Kira. They could have sold me on this fight being up in the air if it weren't for this new Octagon Showdown Stadium, which guaranteed Kira's win because all of Zero's training was Cyclone Stadium dependent. He had a good play when Kira was blocking him from getting up one side. He used the other side to leap over and hit him, but that's really about it. Kira's just better. They're just a step ahead, kind of like when they hacked into the WBBA and now they know about the national tournament and are trying to take over this age of Beyblade with their DNA organization. I'll give this episode a C because while there was one hype moment in these battles, I'll say the battles weren't all that and the outcomes were so predictable. And just keep in mind, this is my first time watching, no spoilers really. I'm not saying this stuff with a bird's eye view. The outcomes were just that predictable, which ruins this episode some. Episode 14, Neo Battlebladers. In this episode, we get a bombshell reveal that the guys that are behind the DNA are the Garcias. These guys just haven't changed. Still slimy, but I will applaud them actually. When they battled Gangan Galaxy and Metal Masters, they wouldn't shut up about how they're broke. Now, it looks like they're kind of rich, so that's swell. So yeah, basically, they're gonna try and take over this new era of Beyblade with their specially chosen bladers. So they agreed to settle this matter at Neo Battlebladers. It's kind of reheating Metal Fusion's nachos, but it's different because basically a third of Metal Fusion was the road to Battlebladers. Meanwhile, this qualification tournament is gonna go by so quick. This is not a journey, it's a smaller scale, kind of more localized tournament. They're not traveling all around Japan. So maybe this arc isn't the road to Neo Battlebladers, maybe it's just the Neo Battlebladers selection tournament arc. And yeah, I would say that was all of the intrigue for this episode. The battles that happened next were just predictable fodder style battles where of course Zero and Shinobu dominated, and of course Rin lost to the new DNA member Genjuro and his bandit Gimbu because she is the fodder character. It's 8 and Rin, but they made it a point to highlight how bad Rin is. She's the token female, so they can say that they have a female blader. Never beat a relevant named opponent so far, and of course, Genjuro isn't going to lose in his big introduction for this bad guy group that they're trying to really hype up, so it's just a predictable L for Rin. So really, my enjoyment for this episode comes down to the Garcia reveal, which is enough to get this episode a C grade. Episode 15, The Best 8 Decided. In this episode, approaching the time limit, we get more DNA chaos, with them trying to stall our heroes or damage their Beyblades, so either they won't make the finals tournament or they won't be at peak performance for it. We even get a new blader from the DNA side, Spike, and his Thief Zerago that was all about damaging and weakening his opponents so Kira would have a better chance to win, which comes directly out of the Garcia playbook with how they use each other for Argo to win. So we're just hopping around between a bunch of qualifying matches, which, like, at least this time, everyone in these battles were named Bladers. However, the results were predictable, and since there was a lot of switching around and such, none of these battles got the necessary spotlight to truly be epic, earning this episode a C grade. It's an episode that possibly could rank higher if it were split up into multiple episodes. I feel like all you need to know is that Sakyo, once built up to be an antagonist, is now playing somewhat of a Kyoya role, or like a Metal Masters Ryuga role. Not buddy-buddy with our heroes, but he's for sure against the DNA. Like, he doesn't like their tactics and like how they're okay with losing to prop up Kira. Sakyo's all about the win, anything to win, you know, I like those vibes. Then we meet our qualifiers for the finals tournament. Zero, Shinobu, Kite, and Sakyo, of course, along with Kira, Yoshio, Takanosuke, and Captain Arrow. So now they're just mocking Rin by letting this random DNA Arrow bloke into this tournament. They didn't even want to let Rin and or 8 into this tournament as early fodder, which, like, I don't know what's more infuriating, them missing the finals tournament or making the tournament just to get smacked in the first round, because that's what was going to happen if they made the tournament. Either way, the problem is that it's the Zero and Shinobu show. They're the only ones that can win consistently. Meanwhile, Bladers like Rin and 8 are taking up too much screen time to be this bad at Beyblade when, hey, maybe that screen time could go to Sakyo and Takanosuke. Episode 16, get pumped for the finals. It's the start of the Neo Battlebladers arc. Well, at least Takanosuke put up a good fight against Zero and came up with a new special move. So despite the loss, I'll give him that. That was an alright fight. But the other fights? They weren't all that. They crammed 4 fights into one episode, so everything is just so rushed. I wouldn't say that all of the outcomes were predictable, so like, there's that, but these battles were over with too quickly to even enjoy them like that. So this episode is gonna get a C grade. Would have been a D if it weren't for Takanosuke versus Zero. Episode 17, a fated showdown between rivals. Before the fights, there's these little training sessions. The DNA one with Kira was ominous, just adding to the conspiracy when he left his Beyblade behind and like talked about how he needed a power-up or like something along those lines. But the Zero training was actually quite creative, having Benkei use a reverse rotating wrecking ball to get ready for Sakyo to match the reverse rotation and strength. Then, when they got to the battle, I will say that something interesting that was at play that I already knew about. Like I said, this is the one fight that I always went back to just to hear Sakyo's music. But yeah, an interesting aspect at play was that Sakyo was able to cancel out Zero's signature technique with his left rotation, but through the power of friendship, Zero was able to get it working again and overpower Sakyo's left rotation and ability to stop the stadium in 0-1. What I like is that the Jet Black Dragon learned his lesson way before the Dragon Emperor. He was still not a completely good guy, still somewhat of a loner, and thinks that only one person can reach the top, so he was treating his stand Takanosuke harshly because of that. But after he saw what the power of friendship did for Zero, increasing his base strength, handing him his first and only loss of this season, Sakyo realized the importance of friendship, gaining rivals and training with friends, and started embracing this friendship stuff more and was nicer to Takanosuke. I like this take on someone that's clearly supposed to be the Ryuga of this generation, the Ryuga successor, but this time he goes down the right path in this new generation of Beyblade. I'll give this episode an A. If you compare it to like any of Jenga and Ryuga's showdowns, it's just not as good, but for Shogun Steel standards, like, this is absolutely an A tier fight. The battle was hype, and I feel like a character in Sakyo actually got better. Like, this battle did something for the characters, giving it more weight, and it's just like giving us somewhat of a different take on a previous character where Ryuga realized too late, but now Sakyo learned his lesson earlier, so like, he'll have more to give, I would say. Episode 18, the ultimate Emperor of Destruction, Bahamut. So in this episode, Now we know what Kira was talking about. He feared that he wouldn't beat our big three with Berserker Behemoth, so he made a Gladiator Bahamut that's bigger than the other Beyblades. So basically, he easily beat Shinobu. Like, really no reason to think that Shinobu was winning here, especially for the grand introduction of the bad guys, new Beyblade, and the rivals never battle in the finals. Like, it's always the protagonist versus the bad guy, it seems. Then the Garcias got the script flipped on them as Kira tried to take over. So like, I'm guessing that having that weaker Behemoth Beyblade was keeping Kira in check. Then, filled with rage, Zero was training, but everyone realized that this type of training wasn't really gonna help. So Jinga made his reintroduction to the series and battled Zero with his Samurai Pegasus and like had to talk him out of his rage, had to talk him out of that state with this Blader Spirit talk. I was leaning towards giving this episode a C because the Shinobu and Kira battle was like just way too predictable, but I'll go with the B because Kira trying to take over the DNA was unexpected, and like I like Jinga's reintroduction here, snapping Zero out of it for the final battle and showcasing more of what this season is all about. The older generation is trusting the new generation with the future of Beyblade and like being guiding hands to help that happen, rather than Jinga trying to take all of the spotlight for himself, like which he already got in the original Metal Saga trilogy. Episode 19, A Spirit-Filled Attack. It's the finals of the Neo Battlebladers tournament, and of course, you already knew the outcome, especially when Jinga came into the picture, especially since it's supposed to be the new generation of Battlebladers, so like it's gonna play out the exact same way it played out the last time. The same way Zero beat Sakyo through friendship and base spirit was the same way that he was able to beat Kira and come up with a new special move through friendship and base spirit. I'll probably give this episode a B. Like, the fight was good. I probably like the Dragoon fight better, and I will say, like, I'm not really used to something like this. Every other like final boss of a tournament is like a two-parter, like Ryuga and Damien. I think it's still a good battle, a decent battle, but like to be more memorable, it probably deserved two parts. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this episode. It's a good fight. Jinga's pep talk ended up coming into play, and yeah, it's a fine episode. Episode 20, A New Fight. It's the start of the Dark Nebula Again arc. So there should be a lot of excitement in the air right now. 01 Neo Battlebladers, Beyblade's going global again. They're planning a world tournament, and Zero, Shinobu, and Kite got selected as regular, so like they're really following the same structure of Metal Fusion and Metal Masters. Should be happy times because the DNA got defeated, but psych, they're still around. There's a new blader on the scene, Baihu, and his Berserker Byakko. So he stole Jinga's Pegasus so it could be used for Synchrome, and he predictably beat Kite while the DNA was trying to cause chaos and like oppose the WBBA and like stop this world tournament. Oh yeah, and DNA stands for Dark Nebula Again because Doji's behind all of this. He is the main antagonist of the Metal Fight Saga, kind of like how the Joker's the main antagonist of the Arkham games because he was in all 4 Arkham games. Meanwhile, Doji's in like 3 of the 4 Metal Fight seasons. But yeah, this is supposed to be a bombshell reveal, but his voice was just so recognizable for all of these episodes. I don't care if I word this reason out. This episode gets a C grade because the battle results were predictable. It's a new blader for the bad guys team, so you have to show off how good he is. He was never losing here, especially against a fodder character. Really, everyone in the main group except for Zero and Shinobu are kind of fodder characters because they struggle to get relevant wins when it matters, and like they're kind of just used to show off how good the villains are. It's just way too predictable for my liking, which lowered the quality of this episode. Episode 21, The Legend and the Evil Combine. Rin finally beat a relevant opponent. Clap it up for the first time in forever. She beat the Gimbu guy that she lost to in the Neo Battlebladers selection tournament. Kite and 8 also got some victories over DNA Bladers, so like it seems like everyone got a power buff post Neo Battlebladers, because like now they're going to be battling on the world stage, so like that actually makes sense. Maybe they were actually going to see that world championships idea through if they made more episodes. Like I understand why everyone outside of Zero and Shinobu needed a power buff, because they'd be complete liabilities on the world stage. So basically what happened in this episode was that there was a tournament for like the last spots on the national team, which was perfect for Rin and 8 because they seemed to be going up against beatable generics, which was good. That should have given them an easy pathway to join in the team, as they're the only ones in the main friend group that aren't on the team. However, they were interrupted because the DNA ran up on them with the squad, which didn't matter a ton because like all of them were taken down so easily and very boring in short battles, because everyone, like I said, like they possibly got a power buff post Neo Battlebladers. But you know, it wasn't a complete loss for the DNA, because Kira got a power buff with his Pegasus Bahamut that was able to absolutely destroy Zero. And then we spent the second half of this episode questioning if Jinga actually joined the Dark Nebula and learning about how Doji survived that fall from Metal Fury. His brain survived that fall, at least. Like he was talking about how he organized all of this stuff. So our main guys agreed to find their hideout. I'll give this episode a C. None of the battles were interesting at all, but like I liked how they shocked me, finally giving Rin a real win. Finally letting the other characters shine a bit, and like I thought that the Doji story was interesting, which is kind of sad that the battles are so mid, so underwhelming, that a highlight of this season is like exposition. But hey, like that's just Shogun Steel for you. Sometimes you just have to find the good in the bad, because if not, then every episode this season would get like a D or an F. Episode 22, Doji Stronghold. In this episode, they went to the Dark Nebula's base. Before they got inside, they were met with this guy, Karua, and his guardian Garudis Beyblade. Basically, his thing was that he could control all of these natural elements, which would make you think that he's really strong and should have competed in Neo Battlebladers. However, it was all gimmicky and location based, and like he was just good at timing his base movement when all of that stuff was happening. Everyone tried to battle him, but Kite told them to go on ahead. What I like a lot about this battle is that when Karua's gimmicks were exposed, like he wasn't a complete sitting duck. I mean, like, of course, he was left to rely on the natural abilities of his Beyblade, but his Beyblade is actually really solid, being able to have great stamina and deliver good counterattacks when hit because of its performance tip. I think we know how this stuff kind of goes. Like we've seen gauntlets where guys like stay behind and like beat the bad guys so their friends can move on. So like it's no different here. But this was an amazing battle right here. One of the best so far, made even better by the fact that someone else, like other than Zero and Shinobu, got to shine. That's why I'll give this episode an A grade. It's an entertaining fight for Shogun Steel standards, I'll say. Episode 23, Entering the Trap. So continuing on from the previous episode, basically all of the villains have a gimmick, and by the end of this episode, all of those gimmicks will be broken through or interrupted. Our heroes split up, so Shinobu had to battle Genjuro, but this time, he's encased in glass, not allowing Shinobu to get his special move off, so he had to break the glass. Rin and 8 took on Spike and Captain Arrow, but they couldn't battle right because of the electromagnetic waves in the hallway. I thought they were going to give Rin and 8 the win because like we've seen invasions like the Dark Nebula Castle infiltration and the Hades City infiltration, and one thing's for sure, maybe like they might lose when they get to the top, like when Jinga lost to Ryuga, but along the way none of our heroes like are ever gonna lose, because like you need one person to be the final boss. Because of that, I thought that Rin and 8 were in for a win, which kind of happened, but like they weren't the driver of that. They were getting dominated, which I wasn't expecting, because like it seemed like they got a power buff because like they were possibly in line to compete on the world stage had the DNA not interrupted that tournament. But here they're saved by Sakyo and Takanosuke, which like I wouldn't say them coming in right here at this moment was predictable, but come on, man. Of course they were going to rejoin the story. They're not bad guys. Despite Sakyo being neutral for most of his run, he was against the DNA, and this is like the last arc of the season. So of course they weren't going to leave these decently prominent characters out of it. Characters that actually had arcs, especially since Sakyo is the jet black dragon, this generation's Ryuga, so like he had to be important. And he still hasn't used Synchrome. Yeah, he still hasn't used the Synchrome Beyblade yet, which he questioned Takanosuke about all of those episodes ago. So like there was absolutely no way that these guys weren't coming back into the story. You see, this Synchrome stuff comes into play because Zero was battling Yoshio, and his gimmick was that he was using an octagon showdown stadium and a Synchrome Beyblade, a behemoth golem that Zero had no answer for. But Sakyo challenged Yoshio to a Synchrome battle with his Griffin Dragoon so Zero could move on. I'll give this episode an A because of the familiarity. Despite some of this stuff being like somewhat predictable, I will say like I was talking about, we have seen Fortress break-ins before and like they always hit. I feel like the battles were balanced out nicely, all of them got decent screen time, and while like I maybe wanted Rin and 8 to win on their own, I'll take the shock factor of Sakyo and Takanosuke showing up, and like I kind of like how everyone can't be a winner, just like in the previous break-ins in the Metal Saga. Shinobu was the only one of the originals that won. In this episode, that is, Kite won in the previous episode. Rin and 8 got saved and Zero tapped out, so it wasn't a predictable outcome where they all overcame their opponents cleanly and perfectly. So like I take that as an attempt to recapture the vibes of the Dark Nebula Castle infiltration and Hades City infiltration, but like not give us the same predictable outcome that always happens with these types of things. Episode 24, Byaku's Roar. In this episode, we get two fights. The first fight was Sakyo's Synchrome battle against Yoshio. The fight wasn't supposed to be this craziest fight ever. It just serves as a resolution to Sakyo's character arc. He learned his lesson in the Zero fight, and now he gets to show it off here through Synchrome. Two bladers have to combine their hearts for Synchrome to truly work, which is why he and Takanosuke's Synchrome was better than Yoshio and Kira's Synchrome. Then we get to Shinobu versus Baihu, which was kind of boring, not gonna lie. The fight was in a maze, and since Baihu was raised in the wild, he knew exactly where Salamander was at all times, so like it wasn't fun seeing like a boring battle that relied heavily on sneak attacks. But I'll give Shinobu his credit for baiting him into destroying his own stadium so he could get enough openings to use his special move and take him down. I'll give this episode a C. I like these fights a little less than the previous fights, but I like that Sakyo gets a fight to show that he learned his lesson and is taking a different path than Ryuga. I like Takanosuke and Sakyo's speech, and like with that, now there's just been multiple instances in Beyblade where they told you that there is a limit to how strong you can get on your own. So anyone that doesn't like how strong Jinga is and how he relies on the power of friendship a lot and how he can summon that in these like serious world-ending scenarios, well, it's safe to say that they don't understand the show. It's a core pillar of the show, a core pillar of Beyblade. How can you miss that? It's not plot armor, rather it's set up by the plot and perfectly explains why he has access to all of this stuff and why someone like Ryuga could never. Episode 25, the all-out mid-air battle. Speaking of core pillars of Beyblade, you're definitely gonna feel that in this episode. It's the final showdown between Kira's Pegasus Bahamut and Zero's Salamander Ifrit, which Shinobu went out of his way to preserve Salamander's condition for this battle. I would say that for a decent amount of this battle, Kira and Zero were at even strength, and it was mostly just Zero trying to get through to Kira with the power of friendship and teach him what a real Beyblade battle is all about. Why is he blading for Doji rather than himself? kind of reminds me of the Jenga and Chris battle, where the actual battle wasn't the focus. Like, Jenga was just trying to talk Chris out of that blader for hire stuff. That's why I'm gonna give this episode a C. It's the preachier setup half of the finale. Episode 26, The Bridge to the Future. So in this episode, Zero and Kira's battle ended earlier than expected in a 0 win. But it turns out the preaching and trying to get Kira to choose his own destiny was because Kira wasn't the actual final boss. Rather, he was needed to beat the actual final boss. The real final boss was Doji in the form of a robot Beyblade, with the help of Jenga, of course, and Yoshio and Kira, because they got through to them. They were able to beat Doji. However, they still had to escape the base, which Takanosuke and Sakyo helped with. After this, we learned that all of the bad guys were sort of just victims that were promised by Doji to be able to live out their dreams. They weren't all that bad. So what happened was, we finally got back to the World Championship stuff. All of our main heroes were selected for the WBBA team to represent Japan. But before the World Championships, Team BTF, Bridge to the Future, which were all of the bad guys, got the chance to challenge them for the right to represent Japan in a completely legal way. They're on the good guy side now and committed to having spirited battles. And after getting some cameos of some previous Bladers from the trilogy just looking on and being happy about where Beyblade's at right now, yeah, that's where Shogun Steel ends. I'll give this episode a B. For a finale, it wasn't quite the quality that I was expecting, but it's still good quality, and I like the resolution a lot. Zero accomplished his goal. In the original 3 seasons, Jenga wasn't able to completely get to Ryuga despite defeating him in Fusion. Sometimes he was an ally, sometimes he was an enemy, which made their job harder when trying to stop the Nemesis crisis. So I like that Zero did something that Jenga wasn't really able to, and converted all of these guys over to the good side, which helps his and the WBBA's goal of reviving Beyblade and having strong friends and rivals to train against. It's a good ending to Zero G, especially post-Nemesis crisis. This was absolutely the ending that a season like Zero G needed. And that's every episode of Beyblade Zero G Shogun Steel rated. Like I said, uncharted territory. I didn't know much of what I was getting into. Whenever I ranked Beyblade seasons, I always ranked it low because of the new characters and my lack of knowledge on it. The fact that it only had 26 episodes. If it were good, why not give it more episodes? Now, after watching it, I'd still rank it low. Definitely not better than Fusion and Masters, but it might be on par or slightly better than Fury. I'm willing to say that. I thought this was going to be a waste of time, epilogue style content, but I'm glad that I gave Zero G a chance. It's solid. One of the main things that I like about this season is that Benkei got to be important after not getting to fight in the Nemesis battle when maybe he should have. He was a very relevant character, especially in Fusion. So I like that he got to play a big role in the next generation of Bladers, and it kind of starts to make up for how he was done in Masters and Fury, actually giving him a purpose in the story. However, I don't really feel like I gained a ton from Shogun Steel. Like I've said multiple times, it follows some of the same tropes and structure and writing choices of the original trilogy, and now it's season 4 of this stuff. So there's a lot of predictability, and there's times where they're just flat out trying to reheat their own nachos, like Takanosuke and Sakyo being Kenta and Ryuga, Neo Battlebladers in the World Tournament. But I don't think that watching Shogun Steel is going to hurt, especially if it's looked at as a season that's not on the level of the other seasons, but it's an extra season. I agree that it's probably the worst of the Metal Saga, but it's only 26 episodes, and you get to see into the future and how the Nemesis crisis affected things. The Synchrome system was interesting, and while some of these fights and episodes were kind of mid, I think it was finding its footing near the end, and a possible World Tournament arc could have gone crazy had they continued the show. And remember what I said about Rin and 8 getting power buffs? It feels like had they got to the World Tournament, those buffs would have actually come into play. And just like how I don't consider Jenga to be the main character of Masters, as he didn't really have a character arc that was Masamune, maybe this World Tournament season could have been the time for Rin to have an arc. Maybe guys like Masamune and Kyoya re-enter the story for mentorship arcs. Yeah, I think the show had potential to be decent. I think it was picking up steam near the end, but also the fact that this show fell from grace from the Masters days was maybe a sign that the show needed to end, like it wasn't going to reach those same heights again. I'll say that Shogun Steel is mid because it had an equal amount of things going for it and against it, so like it all cancels out. I don't think what we got was an amazing season, but like it had potential. It's a fine season, that's what I'll say. Like if you're still craving some metal fight content, this is fine to watch. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Stay strong, stay brutal, because above all else, it's anything to win.
I won't let you down, Bruce. I'll keep fighting. Always.